I never planned to save an empire. I just bought a bigger pot. It started the way most things in my life started, with bad paperwork and worse coffee. The UN Interstellar Relief Corps had officially classified Varath 4 as a non-priority humanitarian zone, which was their polite way of saying they had given up. 3 weeks after the last Corps shuttle lifted off, I was still standing in the ruins of what used to be a market square, ladling synth grain porridge into bowls for children who had nowhere else to go. My name is Marcus Hale, former Army medic, current idiot with a folding table and a dented pot. I stayed because I did the math. 642 children in this refugee quarter. 0 active food programs. 1 human who knew how to stretch protein slabs into something that almost tasted like a meal. The math was pretty simple. I stayed. Varath the Fourth was a dust world. Brown sky, brown ground, brown everything. The Keth who lived here were insectoid, about chest height on me, with 4 arms, multifaceted eyes that caught light like broken mirrors, and the most expressive clicking language I had ever heard. Within a week of setting up my table, I could tell the difference between a hungry click and a thank you click. Within 2 weeks, I could tell the difference between a scared click and an angry one. My translator unit helped, mostly, when it worked. The children came first every morning, always. 2 of them always beat everyone else to the square. I never learned their real names. My translator completely gave up on Keth proper nouns, so I named them in my head. The smaller one had a pattern of iridescent blue markings along her carapace that reminded me of Morse code, so I called her Dot. The bolder one, who arrived every morning like she owned the square, I called Dash. They were underfed when I first saw them, ribs showing through their carapace. Eyes too large in their faces, the way eyes get when the rest of the face has shrunk from hunger. I gave them extra the first day without thinking about it. I gave them extra every day after that for the same reason. Kids shouldn't be hungry. That was the whole philosophy. That was the entire policy document of my organization, which I had named Table for Anyone, and which currently consisted of me, 1 pot, and approximately 47 dented bowls. Dot was shy. She would take her bowl, find a broken piece of wall to sit behind, and eat with careful, precise movements. But she watched everything. Her eyes never stopped moving. Dash was the opposite. Loud, fast, curious about everything, and absolutely convinced that the correct way to learn English was to repeat every word I said at full volume until she had it memorized. By the end of the 2nd week, she could say, "More please," with perfect pronunciation and the confidence of someone who had never been told no. I told her yes every time. I started to look forward to mornings in a way I had not looked forward to anything in years. There was something clean about the routine. Wake up, start the fire, get the water boiling, watch for Dot and Dash coming around the corner of the collapsed building at the east end of the square, feed everyone, wash the bowls, start planning tomorrow's meal with whatever I had left. My log entries from those weeks are embarrassingly mundane. I wrote about running low on synth grain. I wrote about my translator glitching. I wrote about the way the dust got into everything, including my boots, including apparently my lungs, because I developed a cough that lasted 6 weeks. I wrote very little about the children, because it did not occur to me that they were remarkable. They were just children. They were just hungry. Those 2 facts together seemed like all the justification anyone should ever need. What I did not write about, because I did not know about it, was the woman watching me from the shadows. She came every day. She stood in the darkness of a collapsed doorway on the north side of the square, close enough to see everything, far enough to be invisible. She was always hooded, always still. The Keth refugees in the square avoided that doorway without seeming to know why, the way people unconsciously step around a presence that feels important. Her name was Empress Varath Sol Kayan. She was the last sovereign of the Keth harmonized throne, which had ruled this region of space for 400 years, before a rival faction bombed her palace, scattered her court, and drove her people into exactly the kind of refugee camps that the UN Interstellar Relief Corps had decided were not worth their time. She had come to this quarter to find her children. She had found them on the 2nd day. Then she had stayed to watch the human who was feeding them, because she could not approach without putting everyone in danger, and because she could not make herself leave. I did not know any of this. I was thinking about salt, We were almost out of salt. The morning the marauders came was a Tuesday. I remember, because I had just been thinking that I had lost complete track of what day it was, and then I checked my comm unit and it said Tuesday, and I thought, well, at least something still knows what time it is. There were 5 of them, armored in mismatched pieces of military equipment, moving with the relaxed confidence of people who had never been told no. They were Keth, from the faction that had destroyed the Empire, though I did not know that at the time. To me, they were just large and carrying weapons and headed straight for my table. The leader knocked over my pot with one arm, just reached out and knocked it over like it meant nothing. 2 months of careful rationing, spreading across the brown dirt. He told me, through my sputtering translator, that there was a tax for operating in this square. He wanted my remaining supplies, my equipment, and whatever currency I was carrying. The refugee children had pressed back against the walls. Dot and Dash were behind a chunk of broken concrete, watching with their large, careful eyes. I looked at the spilled porridge. I looked at the children. I looked at the man in front of me. "You can take everything," I said. My translator coughed and sputtered through the words in Keth. "But these children are going to finish eating first. And I need you to understand something." I picked up the pot, set it back upright. The galaxy gets smaller every year. Every year there are more humans, and we go more places, and we remember more things. I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you a fact. We remember. It was not a speech. It was barely a statement. I was tired and my back hurt, and I had dust in my lungs, and all I wanted was for these children to eat breakfast. The marauders looked at each other. There is something about a person who is not afraid, not because they are brave, but because they have simply run out of energy for fear, that is very difficult to push against. They left. They took nothing. I never saw them again. I righted my table, salvaged what porridge I could, and finished the morning service. In the collapsed doorway on the north side of the square, the Empress was gripping her attendant's arm hard enough to leave marks. Her attendant told her later that she had never seen the Empress cry before that morning. The Empress denied it. The attendant wisely did not argue. The weeks after that were harder, quietly. My supply line had dried up. The resupply ship that was supposed to come through our sector had rerouted to avoid conflict zones, which was a reasonable decision for everyone, except the 642 children, depending on a human with a dented pot. I started skipping my own meals without really deciding to. I would prepare the morning service, make sure everyone had a full bowl, and then realize there was nothing left for me, and find that I did not mind as much as I probably should have. My log entries got shorter. More tired, Dot noticed. I do not know how, but she noticed. One morning she showed up with something in her smaller set of hands, a flat piece of carved stone, smooth from handling, with markings etched into it that I did not understand. She held it out with the solemnity of a child presenting something very precious. I took it carefully, turned it over. The markings were beautiful, intricate, clearly done by an adult with skill. "Thank you," I told her, and she clicked something soft and quick. I put it in my pocket. I called it my good luck rock. I carried it every day after that. I found out much later that it was a Keth gratitude token, the kind traditionally given only to family. On the morning of the 94th day, I packed my bag. Not permanently. I had made arrangements. An elder in the refugee quarter had agreed to manage food distribution while I was gone. I had a lead on a black market supplier 2 systems over, who owed a favor to a friend who owed a favor to me. It was a long chain of uncertain favors, and the journey was not safe, and there was a reasonable chance I would not make it back on schedule. I told myself I would make it back. I was pretty good at making it back. I went to find Dot and Dash to say goodbye. This was the part I had been putting off all morning. They were in their usual spot, at the corner of the square where the light hit best in the mornings, sitting on a flat piece of rubble, and doing something with a length of rope I had taught them to braid. Dash had also somehow acquired my card deck, which I was fairly certain I had left in my pack, and was holding it with the satisfied expression of someone who had made excellent life choices. "That's mine," I said. She clicked something that my translator rendered, probably incorrectly, as finder's rights. I sat down with them. We stayed there for a while, not saying much. I showed them the route I was taking on my comm unit's map, which they studied with enormous seriousness. I told them the elder would take care of the table while I was gone. I told them to eat everything in their bowls, even the parts they did not like, because their bodies needed it. Then I told them, in the broken keth my translator had slowly assembled for me over 3 months, I will come back. I always come back. Dash clicked something sharp and certain. My translator said, "We know." I stood up, adjusted my pack, started walking. Human. The voice came from behind me. It was a single word, but it carried in it the weight of someone who had spent a lifetime being listened to. Not loud, not demanding, just absolutely certain that it would be heard. I turned around. The woman in the center of the square had lowered her hood. She stood very straight, and the morning light caught the iridescent markings along her carapace. The same markings as Dot and Dash, I realized. The same patterns I had spent 3 months thinking were just natural variation, now arranged on an adult in their full complexity and unmistakable significance. Every Keth refugee in the square had gone still. Then, one by one, they moved to their knees. The elder first, then the adults, then the older children. Dot and Dash ran to the woman and clicked names I could not catch, and she gathered them against her with all 4 arms, and held them the way people hold things they thought they had lost. My translator chose this moment to work perfectly, which seemed like terrible timing. It rendered her full title in careful, precise English. "Oh," I said. "Huh." She looked at me across the square. Her eyes, like her children's eyes, caught the light like broken mirrors. "I have watched you," she said, "for 94 days. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing. You fed my children," she continued. "You did not ask their names. You did not ask their value. You did not ask what they were worth or who they belonged to. You saw that they were hungry, and you fed them, and then you came back the next day and did it again." She paused. "I have ruled a civilization for 19 years, she said. "I have negotiated with powers that control entire star systems. I have never seen anything like you." A ship broke through the cloud cover above us. Then another. Supply vessels, I realized. Large ones. "I called in every favor left to me," she said simply. 6 months of supplies, medical equipment, a new translator. She glanced at my sputtering comm unit with something that on a human face I would have called dry humor. "You will need it." I looked up at the ships, then back at her. I felt the good luck rock in my pocket. "I did not do this as payment," she said, and her voice was very precise on this point, the way the voice of someone who has chosen every word carefully gets precise. "There is no payment for what you did. I did this because my children are alive. You are the reason." She asked me why I stayed when every institution left, why I kept coming back. I thought about it. I thought about 11 years as a medic, about the one rule that had always made sense to me above all others. "I was a medic for a long time," I said. "The rule is, you don't leave until everyone is stable. These kids weren't stable." Silence. "That is all?" she asked. "That's everything," I said. The table became a building eventually. Nothing impressive. 4 walls, a real roof, a stove that actually worked. The sign above the door was in 6 languages. In English it said, "Table for anyone." In Keth, the Empress had it say something that translated to, "The human's place, where the hungry are seen." I wrote about it in my log on the 94th night. I wrote about running out of salt. I wrote about Dash still refusing to return my card deck. I wrote about the drawing Dot had made on the wall of the new building, which appeared to be a picture of me, and in which I was considerably taller and better looking than I had any right to be. At the end, I wrote, "The Empress asked me to stop calling her that. She said there is a Keth word for what I am to her children." I asked the translator. It came back as, "the one who stayed." I have been called worse.